Okay, hello everyone. Allan Gwyn here. We have Jim Ray joining me today. We're going to talk about West Texas chimney and venting solutions and everything you need to know about fireplaces, chimneys, dryer vents. You know, if you've been paying attention to the news, we had a dryer vent fire not too long ago here in the city, so that's always important. And so we have a lot to discuss. And Jim, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me this morning, Alan.
I'm glad you are here. Can you kind of tell me what West Texas Chimney and Venting Solutions is about?
Sure. Basically, it was started about 40 years ago. There was a couple out of Claude, and they started it as J&J Chimney. A lot of folks around town may remember that. And we bought the company from them a little over 25 years ago. And so it was J&J for, I don't know, roughly about 10 years or so. And then we rebranded about 15 years ago to West Texas Chimney. And so we've been full-time chimney service. We do pretty much everything involved with chimneys and fireplaces. We do cleanings, we do inspections, we do repairs, we do installations, just pretty much the whole gamut. And as you mentioned, then we also clean and inspect dryer vents. Because there's not a whole lot of difference between cleaning a dryer vent and cleaning a chimney. And so they kind of go hand in hand from that standpoint. So that's kind of what we're about.
Well, okay, we'll kind of talk about the dryer vents here in just a little bit. We'll get the two separate so we can let people kind of get an idea of what's going on. But first of all, let's talk about chimney inspections. A lot of people probably don't realize that they need a chimney inspection because we're talking about bad gases that can come off firewood or whatever you're burning in that fireplace. And so why are these inspections so necessary?
Basically, Alan, it's twofold from that standpoint. So on most of them, like a masonry chimney, you have like a terracotta liner that goes up to the middle of it, aka clay liner. And what that is designed to do is take the hot poisonous gases from your fireplace where the wood's burning or gas from that standpoint, and then convey it up to the outside air. So that is a primary duty of a chimney. Like I said, it could be a masonry terracotta, or so many homes now on new construction have a factory built, which is basically a box that comes from the factory, and then that's placed, and then you have the pipe goes to the top. So you could either have a masonry chimney or a pipe chimney, but both of them, the jobs are exactly the same. So it's important to check and make sure that that chimney liner is doing the job that it's intended to do. Now, for some reasons it may, if it's a factory built with the pipe, it may not be installed correctly. We've come across from time to time in our inspections where particularly if it makes a bend, they didn't get put together correctly, and then you have a hole in there, and invariably that's going to be in the attic. And then you could have poisonous gases up in the attic, which is filled with carbon monoxide. Could get into your heating and HVAC system, and the next thing you know, you're breathing carbon monoxide, and hopefully you've got carbon monoxide detectors in your home that's going to start screaming at you that, yeah, we might have a problem to look at from that standpoint. And then also in the terracotta, on the masonry, people think, well, it's brick, mortar, it's going to last forever. The biggest downfall of chimneys, believe it or not, is actually water. It's not the burning, it's not the heat, it's actually water. And so over time, that water running down that can dissolve the mortar. And also, if you have the clay tiles, usually they're 1 foot, sometimes 2 foot, but most of them are 1 foot sections. And then the reason they use terracotta clay is that it will expand and contract with the heat without breaking. Whereas if you took just a regular brick on the side of your house and heated it up, it'll expand and break. It won't contract. But the terracotta, you'll see, the chimeneas, from New Mexico, that's the terracotta clay, and they use that because it'll expand and contract, with the heat. And so, but over time, the bottom ones do a lot more expansion and contraction because there's a lot more heat difference than the ones on top. And so actually you get them and they start rubbing each other, and the mortar in between, it literally just rubs it raw, and it's completely empty, and you have gaps and voids in those. And then you have a performance problem where, well, my chimney's not drawing, the smoke's coming in the house, it's puffing back, it's not going out like it's supposed to. And think of it like you're drinking, a soda with a straw that's got holes in it. You try to suck it out, and it's not going to work worth a flip. And that's the same way if you have holes in your chimney. So what we do at West Texas Chimney is we will check not only the outside of your chimney that you're looking at from the ground with the brick and see if the mortar's good, or if you got bricks falling off or whatever the case may be, but we also check the inside of it. And we will run a camera up, check for these voids and gaps and cracks, and make sure it's all connected correctly. So from the importance is from the safety aspect. Is it doing the job it's supposed to of taking the hot poisonous gases from your fireplace, from your firebox, to the outside air? Or is it coming back into the house? Is it going back into the attic? Is it going back into voids inside your house and going places that it shouldn't be? So that's the first thing that we inspect for. And the second one, as I mentioned, is water damage. Because you've got, on a masonry fireplace, you've got usually what we call a crown, which is the top, and it will develop cracks. And then you start getting the freeze-thaw cycle going on. Those cracks get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you get unwanted water entry going down inside your home to places you really don't want it going. And a lot of times don't know that it's going there until you've got a big problem. And then also that water will get inside the brick, and then it will start with the mortar, distinguishing that out and decaying the mortar in that. And then you start getting loose brick, and then they start falling off. And then you got more water entry, and then you got more freezing, and it just kind of compounds once it gets started on that. So what we do is we check and make sure on a masonry chimney that all the bricks are in there good, and all the joints have water in them. If not, then we can come back and we can repoint those. We can do water sealant. We did one a couple of weeks ago that the masonry chimney took a hit from lightning, had a lightning strike. And of course, it hit it and blew bricks all over the yard. And so we were able to, to go back and rebuild the chimney from that standpoint. And so, the water could do the same type of problem. Also, when you're factory built, which may have brick, or it may have siding, or it may have wood that's painted, and though same type of deal, you can get the water entry, wood, water, not a good combination. Nope. They have a tendency to rot. So we check and make sure the integrity of your chimney is the way that it's supposed to do. And so it's not just like, we go up, take a look at it, it's still here, we're good, calling it good, and leave. But we do a very stringent inspection inside and out to make sure that it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be.
Okay, so we have a ton of new houses going up between Amarillo and Canyon, just all over the place, people coming in from other states. Should the consumer just assume that their brand new house's chimney and fireplace system is good, or should they have it inspected before they use it that first time?
That's kind of a touchy situation. It's different, from the inside the city limits, obviously, and outside. There are certain codes. All installations, there are standards and codes that needs to be followed. Majority of the time, they are. But sometimes, they're not checked. There's no checks and balances on that. So we run into problems. Personally, particularly if you're doing a factory-built installation, I would think it would behoove the buyer or the people that are having built it to check that installation and make sure that it's done correctly. Along those same lines, when you buy and sell a house, we'd highly recommend a chimney and fireplace inspection. Now, the majority of the time, the realtors say, okay, yes, we got to do a house inspection. Yes, we need to hire a plumber, and do a sewer inspection and a gas pressure inspection. You also need a termite inspection. But 99% of the time, they stop short by one, and that is your chimney and fireplace. According to the NFPA 211, which is the National Fire Protection Agency, Part 211, which is the national, any real estate sale of real estate requires, it's not saying it's a good idea or recommended, it says requires that it has a chimney and fireplace inspection. The problem is that it is a standard and not a code. Current time, City of Amarillo does not adhere to the NFPA 211. They go with the residential codes. So that's one that they go by. There are around the nation, a lot of municipalities that do the NFPA 211, and a lot of states have adopted it statewide. Texas is not one of them. However, we at West Texas Chimney highly recommend getting that, particularly you brought up the new construction. That's important, but what if you've got a house that's 20 years old and it's never been cleaned, never been inspected? What kind of issues can they have? True, the house inspector will do their inspection, but in all fairness to them, they are not geared toward a intense inspection on the chimney and fireplaces. The reason being, that's our job. However, they will say a lot of times we recommend further evaluation by a chimney professional. Have this checked, but it's not their responsibility. So, kind of a misnomer that people think I got it inspected by a house inspector, but my chimney and fireplace is fine. But what happens is the inspector will do inspection and say, well, it needs to be clean. You've got a dirty fireplace, dirty chimney, it needs to be clean. So they go through the sailing process, blows on the house, call us out a month later to clean and inspect it. Then we find the problem. And it's very disheartening to say you've got problems and you're going to have this work done, before you can use this. And I just ache for them, because if they'd had that inspection beforehand, we could have avoided that. And they can't blame it on the house inspector, because that's not their scope of their inspection. It's ours. And so definitely buying, selling homes, highly recommend an inspection.
Let's talk about chimney fires. We don't hear about them happening too often, but they can be devastating, or you might even have one and not know it. Can you talk a little bit about chimney fire situations and what causes them?
Sure, Alan. You're right. Most of the time, people don't even know they have a chimney fire. I've talked to people who have had one, and they found out when their neighbor ran across the street and knocked on the door and said, "You've got a Roman candle going up out of your chimney," in the middle of the night type of deal. For the ones that are able to know it, usually you can hear it. I've never heard one. I've been told it sounds like a train or a jet engine that's going off, because of the heat will be going from your fireplace 400 or 500 degrees up to 2,500 to 3,000 degrees, just like that. So you've got a lot of forces going up at once, and it generates a lot of power. So that's what causes that jet engine type deal. But a lot of people, they're sleeping, they don't hear it. Maybe a minor one, but we as chimney professionals, we can tell, that it's been done. Every once in a while, when you have a chimney fire, I didn't know I had one. Well, yes, you have, and we can show them why. We take pictures and document it and everything. But what causes it is that wood burning produces smoke. And then in the smoke, you've got creosote, which is basically tar. It's like little droplets of tar in the smoke. And so as the smoke rises out of your chimney, those little droplets, they cool, and so then they stick to the side of your chimney, and then you have a creosote that starts lining your chimney. Being tar, it's highly, highly flammable. So when you start getting enough of that over time, months, years, usually, years and years and years without a cleaning, and then you get, quarter of an inch or half an inch creosote in there, and then one of these days it's going to ignite. And like I said, it starts at the bottom, goes to the top, just like that, and then you've got a major fire. Now, I mentioned that the terracotta tiles will expand and contract with heat. But when you go from 500 degrees 2,000 degrees, it's going to expand really quick, crack and break. And so now your protective liner is broken. You've got a roaring fire in there, and then you've got a little bit of brick, 3 inches of brick, and you've got a 2,000, 2,500 degree fire up in your attic. And then you've got supports with your 2x4s on your rafters and joists, and then they ignite. And then the next thing you know, you've got an attic. All kinds of problems. Same problem if you have a factory-built fireplace with the pipe. If it gets too hot, same type of deal. It's going to buckle, expand, gap open, flames coming out in the attic with wood framing, and then you've got the same problem. So there's absolutely nothing good about a chimney.
Okay, so if you happen to, let's say that I call you guys and ask you to come over and, inspect and clean my fireplace and my chimney, and you notice a big buildup of that creosote in there. It just looks like volcanic glass or whatever on the inside. What's the best way to remove that?
Depending on how bad it is, how bad the accumulation is, most of the time we can clean it manually with our brushes that we do with the regular chimney sweeping with our brushes. Sometimes it gets so bad being tar, it doesn't work any good. So we can actually go through and we can chemically treat it. And what it does is it breaks down that creosote, and it's kind of like a solstice. I remember my grandmother, I'd get like a wasp sting or something, and she'd say, well, let me get the solstice. I had no idea what it was, but she would put it on there, but it would like draw out the poison and dry and make the swelling go down. So our chemical treatment does the same thing, is it pulls out all the bad stuff in the creosote and makes it very flaky. And then we can go back after it does its thing with its chemical reaction. And then we go back and sweep it, and then you get your chimney's cleaner than what it was before. So to answer your question, on really bad ones, we can chemically treat it, make it back to a usable place.
Okay, perfect. Now, you mentioned earlier how water is one of the big enemies of a fireplace system. I have a neighbor that has just a wire mesh screen over the top of their masonry fireplace. And of course, I know the answer to this, but I was talking to him about why he needs to get a chimney cap because of the water damage. And then I explained to him about his damper. So, what happens if you get water damage on that damper? And for people that may not know, what is a damper?
A lot of people like to call it the flute or the flue.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the damper is a little mechanism on a masonry fireplace. You reach up and you grab it and you open and close it like a refrigerator door. And that's the little plate that you close to the flue liner or open it. So that little plate mechanism is called the flue. And it's metal. And you get water running down continuously down the inside of that and pulling in there. Water, rust, decay, no work, have to replace. It gets a little expensive replacing a damper that's back up, at the top of your firebox. By the same token, if you start getting, the creosote built up, even if it's not that bad yet, where it's, a safety issue, water and creosote, you put them together, you get an acid. And then you get an acid with mortar, and that will start eating it up. And it gets down also, that acid will also eat away at your damper. And then also down into actually your firebox, where you put your fire, will start eating up the fire brick and the mortar. So two good reasons for having a chimney cap as far as water. And then, of course, the screen, will keep out the varmints and everything, which is good, but it's not going to stop the water intrusion.
Okay, yeah, because in a masonry fireplace, if the damper is frozen because of rust and deterioration, it has to be cut out. And then you have to go a more expensive route because you can't just replace what you cut out.
Right.
You have to go with a special top mount damper, which can get kind of pricey. So it would behoove a homeowner to make sure they have a good chimney cap.
Actually, that's a good point. Not only good chimney cap, but also you're kind of tied into the maintenance. I mean, you do regular maintenance on your home from time to time. You have to do a little painting, a little cleaning, a little WD-40 here and there. So as a homeowner, you're always doing maintenance. You need to be doing the same thing with your chimney and fireplace. Because you have, HVAC companies will come out and do regular maintenance, on your HVAC system. And plumbers also with your sewer. So you might have some electrical issues for electrician. And so, as with your fireplace and chimney, once again, chimney professionals come out for routine maintenance to clean and inspect and make sure that it's doing what you want it to do.
Okay, perfect. So let me see here. We've talked about, something that I can remember being pretty common, especially in the spring, from people that don't have that cap on there to keep the varmints out. Oh, what does a person do if they determine they may have a bird down in their chimney?
Yeah, it depends on what kind of bird that it is. I mean, if you get just, a dove or starling or something like that, no big deal. We can get that out and go on the merry way. However, there is a little bird that's called a chimney swift, and it's cousin to the barn swallow. So if you've seen the barn swallows, a lot of times you'll have them on your porch up under the top of your porch.
That big mud nest.
Yeah, exactly, mud nest. Anyway, they're cousins. The chimney swift makes the same kind of nest, but they make it inside a chimney. It's the name chimney swift. And so that they can actually fly in the chimney and then fly back out, back and forth. And so they will make their nest in there and have their babies. Unfortunately, the babies are the most obnoxious, one of the most obnoxious sounds that you'll ever hear. To me, it sounds like the combination of a rattlesnake and a grinding wheel. And of course, being inside your chimney, that chimney acts as a megaphone, so it actually makes it sound even louder coming from your fireplace. And so every time mama or dad shows up for feeding time, they go crazy and you're trying to have dinner or watch a little TV, and then you hear all this racket going on. And so they come call us, we'll get them out. If you have chimney swifts, unfortunately, we cannot do anything about it because they are a federally protected bird. They're migratory, and they migrate all the way to Peru. So they winter in Peru, which is summer for them, then they'll come up to the U.S. and Canada, raise their young, and then they get them at the end of the season, they'll all band together and they'll fly back to Peru. What's interesting, if they make the trip to Peru, they will come back next spring to the exact same chimney for their home. But if we just tell them, there's nothing we can do about it until August, roughly is when they start leaving, then we can go in, clean their chimney, put a cap on. And like I said, if they survive, they're going to come back and they're going to bring their friends and their cousins and everything else on that. So, but on the plus side, their favorite diet are flying insects like flying gnats and mosquitoes and things of that nature do have. But once again, prevention is a lot better, to get the cap on there, and that way they'll go next door and bother your neighbor, and you still get the benefits of taking care of mosquitoes.
Well, that is good. Now, the chimney swift is the only bird in North America that can fly up and down a chimney. A dove can't.
I've never seen a dove that's been able to, or a starling. Every once in a while, you'll get a small owl can do it, but most birds have to get a running start. They can't just flat foot and go straight up. Chimney swifts are one of the few where that they can't even stand on flat. They have to be attached to vertical where they spend all their life. But I have seen, I had a customer had an owl that would come and go, a small owl was to get in and out of it. But I think what they did is they got like halfway up and kind of used its feathers and get up to the top, but didn't actually just fly all the way up. So the swift's the only one that I've ever seen that can just come and go. There may be more, but I'm not sure of them. But the chimney swifts are ones that we have problems with.
Okay, so yeah, like you said, the key takeaway from that, get a chimney cap because it will protect you from birds, squirrels that I've seen that will accidentally get down in there, and water damage. And if you get the right kind of chimney cap, it's got a lifetime warranty because it's stainless steel. So those are always very good to have. So let me see here. Got just about a minute and a half left. You mentioned something about repointing. A lot of people probably don't know what repointing means. I didn't until I started in the business. So what is repointing?
Actually, it's people confuse it with tuck pointing, but basically repointing is when you re-tuck point, and tuck point is when you have the masonry brick and then the mortar in between those. When you put that mortar in there, that is tuck pointing. And then when it goes bad and you develop cracks and it decays, then you have to go through and cut the bad out and re-point the mortar back in there. That's what we do when you develop cracks in the mortar in your brick chimney. Then we go through and cut out the bad places and then put mortar back in. So that is 20.
Right, perfect. Well, I know we've got a lot more to talk about, but we're out of time for this particular session. I hope you will come back
Absolutely.
because
love
we've
to.
got a lot more to talk about. And Jim, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. And we look forward to having you come back.
Great. Wonderful.
Right.